Have you ever been in a meeting where everyone is nodding along, and you're just praying nobody asks you a question because you're not entirely sure what they've been talking about for the last 20 minutes? Yeah, me too. That was my life for the first 6 months at my international marketing job in London. I thought my English was pretty good, you know? I'd passed all the exams. But real-world English, especially in a high-stakes work environment, is a whole different beast. Welcome to our English conversation practice for intermediate B2 learners. I'm your host, and over this series, we're going to dive deep into the language you actually need for work, travel, and relationships. We'll unpack real stories, I'll share some embarrassing mistakes I made so you don't have to, and we'll practice the phrases that will make you sound confident and natural. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you'll not only understand what's happening in those meetings, but you'll be the one leading the conversation. Let's start with work, since that's where many of us feel the most pressure. The key to thriving in an English-speaking workplace isn't just about perfect grammar, it's about understanding the culture and the unspoken rules. For instance, did you know that in many British and American companies, people often use indirect language to make requests? Instead of saying "do this," they might say, "It would be great if we could get this done." It sounds softer, but it's still an instruction. I learned that the hard way when my boss said, "Perhaps you might want to look into the quarterly figures," and I thought it was a friendly suggestion. It wasn't. It was a top priority. So, my first tip for you is to pay close attention to these modal verbs and softeners like could, would, perhaps, and maybe. They are the secret code to understanding what people really want. I remember my first business trip to the States. I was so nervous about the small talk. Americans are famous for their friendliness, right? But what do you talk about? The weather? Sports? I prepared a mental list. But then, during a coffee break, a colleague asked me, "So, what's your story?" I froze. My story? I didn't have a story. I later realized it's just a common, open-ended way to ask about your background or what you're passionate about. A great response is something like, "Well, I've been in marketing for about 5 years, and I'm really fascinated by digital trends." It's concise, professional, and opens the door for more conversation. This leads me to a crucial piece of advice: always have a personal elevator pitch ready for work situations. A short, 30-second summary of who you are and what you do. Practice it until it feels natural. It will save you in so many unexpected moments. Now, let's talk about something that makes even native speakers nervous: giving presentations. I'll never forget the first time I had to present a campaign idea to our global team. My palms were sweaty, my heart was racing, and I was convinced I'd forget every word of English I ever knew. But here's a secret I learned: preparation is your best friend, but over-preparation can be your enemy. If you memorize a script word for word, any small stumble can throw you off completely. Instead, focus on key points and practice speaking around them naturally. Use signposting language to guide your audience. Phrases like "I'd like to begin by outlining," or "moving on to the next point," or "to summarize," are lifesavers. They give you structure and make you sound fluent, even if you're feeling shaky inside. Another game changer for me was learning how to handle questions confidently. In my early days, when someone asked a question I wasn't sure about, I'd panic and give a vague answer. Big mistake. It made me look unprepared. Now, I use bridging phrases to buy myself a moment to think. For example, if I need a second, I might say, "That's an excellent question. Let me elaborate on that." Or "I'm glad you asked that." To put it in context. This not only makes you sound more composed but also shows that you're engaging with your audience. And if you don't know the answer, it's perfectly okay to say, "I don't have that information at hand, but I'll find out and get back to you." Honesty builds trust far more than bluffing. Let's shift gears a bit to travel. Whether it's for business or pleasure, navigating airports, hotels, and public transport in English can be daunting. I once spent an hour lost in a foreign airport because I was too embarrassed to ask for directions. I thought my question had to be perfectly grammatical. It doesn't. People are generally helpful if you're polite and clear. Learn a few essential phrases for travel situations. For instance, at immigration, you might hear, "What's the purpose of your visit?" A simple, "I'm here for business," or "I'm on vacation," is all you need. When checking into a hotel, practice saying, "I have a reservation under the name." And "Could I have a wake-up call at?" These small phrases can smooth out so many potential stressors. One of my most memorable travel blunders was when I tried to order food in a cafe. I meant to ask for a toasted sandwich, but I said a burned sandwich instead. The waiter looked horrified. We laughed about it later, but it taught me the importance of learning vocabulary specific to dining. Words like appetizer, entree, well done, or medium rare for meat, and how to ask for the bill politely. "Could we have the check, please?" Remember, in many English-speaking countries, tipping is expected, so it's good to know the customs. In the US, for example, 15 to 20% is standard in restaurants. These little bits of knowledge not only help you get by but also make your travels more enjoyable and authentic. Now, let's dive into the most rewarding, and sometimes most challenging, area of language use: building relationships. This goes beyond just colleagues or casual acquaintances. I'm talking about forging genuine friendships and deeper connections. When I first moved to London, my conversations were transactional, ordering coffee, discussing projects, asking for directions. I felt lonely because I wasn't connecting with people on a personal level. The breakthrough came when I learned the art of the follow-up question. Instead of just answering "I'm fine" when someone asked how I was, I started asking them back with genuine interest. "I'm well, thanks. How was your weekend?" It sounds simple, but it opens a door. This leads us to moving beyond small talk. Small talk is the gateway, but to build a friendship, you need to share a bit of yourself and show curiosity about the other person. Listen for hooks in their conversation. If a colleague mentions they love hiking, don't just say "That's nice." Ask a follow-up question. "Oh, I've always wanted to get into hiking. What's the best trail you've ever done?" This shows you're listening and interested. I made one of my closest friends here because I noticed he had a book on photography on his desk. I asked him about it, and that one question led to a 2-hour conversation and a trip to the Tate Modern the following weekend. The vocabulary here is about expressing interest and sharing experiences. Phrases like "That's fascinating," "Tell me more," or "I had a similar experience when," are incredibly powerful. Of course, not all conversations are positive. What happens when there's a misunderstanding or a disagreement? This is where your language skills are truly tested. Early on, I used to avoid conflict at all costs, which meant I often agreed to things I didn't want to do. I learned that it's possible to disagree politely and assertively. Instead of a blunt "you're wrong," you can say, "I see your point, but I have a slightly different perspective." Or, "Could I offer an alternative view?" This frames your disagreement as a contribution, not a confrontation. It's also crucial to use "I" statements. "I feel frustrated when meetings start late because it impacts my schedule" is much more effective than "you are always late for meetings." This approach has helped me navigate workplace disagreements and even strengthen my relationships because it builds respect. Let me share a personal story. I once had a project partner who wasn't pulling their weight. I was getting resentful, but I said nothing. Finally, I gathered the courage to say, "I've been feeling a bit overwhelmed with the project workload. I was wondering if we could realign our tasks. I think it would help us both meet the deadline more effectively." The result? They apologized, admitted they were struggling with another deadline, and we worked out a fairer split. The conflict wasn't a disaster, it was a solution. The key was focusing on the problem, not the person, and using collaborative language like "we" and "us." But relationships aren't just about navigating conflicts, they're also about sharing joys and supporting each other through difficulties. This is where your emotional vocabulary needs to expand beyond happy and sad. Let me tell you about when my friend Anna got a promotion. I wanted to congratulate her in a way that felt genuine and warm. Instead of just saying "congratulations," I said, "I'm so thrilled for you. You've worked so hard for this, and it's incredibly well-deserved." Using stronger, more specific words like thrilled and phrases like well-deserved made the sentiment much more powerful and personal. On the flip side, when another friend was going through a tough time, I avoided cliches like "cheer up" or "it will be okay." Instead, I practiced active listening and used phrases of empathy. "That sounds really difficult. I'm here for you if you want to talk." This doesn't require complex grammar, but it requires heart and the right words. This brings us to the subtle art of humor and sarcasm. Understanding humor in a second language is a true B2 level challenge. British humor, in particular, is often dry and full of sarcasm. I once made a self-deprecating joke about my own presentation skills, and my British colleague replied with a deadpan, "Oh, absolutely, it was truly the worst thing I've ever seen." I was mortified for a second until I saw the twinkle in his eye. I learned that tone and context are everything. To participate, start gently. Self-deprecating humor is usually a safe bet. Saying something like, "Well, my cooking skills are a danger to the public," can be a light-hearted way to connect. The key is to pay attention to how others joke and to never use sarcasm that could be misunderstood as criticism until you're very comfortable with the person. Now, let's combine two worlds, work and relationships, through the ritual of socializing. The dreaded office party or the casual after-work drink. These events are goldmines for building rapport, but they can feel like minefields. What do you talk about when you're not talking about work? The secret is to have a few go-to topics. Current events, avoiding politics and religion, television series, travel plans, or hobbies are all great. I always prepare by reading a few headlines about a positive local event or a new film release. Ask open-ended questions like, "Have you seen any good movies lately?" or "Are you planning any trips this year?" And here's a pro tip: people love to talk about their passions. If you know a colleague is a fantastic baker, ask them about their favorite recipe. It shows you see them as more than just a coworker. Remember, the goal isn't to be the most eloquent person in the room. The goal is to connect. Every relationship you build becomes a part of your support system in that language. It creates a safe space for you to practice, to make mistakes, and to learn the beautiful, informal, and idiomatic language that you'll never find in a textbook. These are the connections that transform a foreign place into a home. So, the next time you're invited for a coffee, take a deep breath and go. Your vocabulary for life is waiting there. Now, let's pack our bags, both literally and metaphorically, because we're diving deeper into travel. And I want to start with a concept that changed everything for me. Travel is not about the destination, it's about the state of mind. You can be a tourist, or you can be a traveler. A tourist checks sites off a list, a traveler absorbs the experience. And your language approach should reflect that. After my burned sandwich incident, I decided to stop being a passive tourist and start being an active participant. This meant going beyond phrasebooks and engaging with the world around me. It began with changing one simple habit. Instead of always using the self-service check-in at the airport, I would deliberately go to the desk and have a conversation with the agent. "Hi, I'm checking in for the flight to Barcelona. I'm really looking forward to it, it's my first time. Any seat recommendations?" This tiny interaction did two things. It gave me real, low-pressure speaking practice, and it often resulted in a better seat or a useful tip. The agent, seeing my enthusiasm, might upgrade me or mark me as a friendly passenger. This is a powerful lesson. People are more inclined to help you when you show genuine interest and positivity. Once you arrive, the real adventure begins, navigating public transport. This used to be a major source of anxiety for me. The crowded tubes in London, the complex metro map in Paris. I'd stand there, staring at the map, hoping no one would talk to me. Then I realized I was missing a golden opportunity. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a bridge to interaction. I learned to approach a station attendant or a friendly-looking local and ask, "Excuse me, I'm trying to get to the city center. Is this the right platform, or do I need to validate this ticket before boarding?" Their answers taught me more about the local culture and systems than any guidebook could. And let's talk about accommodation. Staying in a hotel is comfortable, but if you really want to practice your English and meet people, consider a boutique hostel or a bed and breakfast. The communal areas are designed for conversation. I've had some of my most memorable chats in hostel kitchens, over a shared pot of pasta. The conversations are unstructured, spontaneous, and cover everything from travel stories to life philosophies. It's the perfect environment to practice the relationship-building skills we talked about earlier, but in a global context. You learn slang from Australians, idioms from Americans, and a myriad of accents that will truly train your ear. It's the ultimate immersive practice, and it's incredibly fun. But travel isn't always smooth sailing. There will be problems. A lost reservation, a missed connection, a stolen wallet. These are stressful situations in your own language, let alone a foreign one. This is where your English needs to be clear, calm, and assertive. Practice the language of problems. Phrases like, "I have a problem with my booking, it seems there's no record of it," or "My wallet has been stolen, can you tell me where the nearest police station is?" are essential. Remember to keep your tone polite but firm. Using I statements is crucial here too. "I need help," or "I need to report a theft." This communicates urgency without aggression and is more likely to get you the assistance you need. My most valuable travel lesson didn't happen at a famous landmark or a museum. It happened at a dusty bus stop in a small village, where I had just missed the last bus of the day. The sun was setting, my phone was dead, and a wave of pure panic washed over me. This was the moment my textbook English met real life, and it was terrifying. I had to think fast. I went into the only open shop, a small grocery store, and instead of panicking, I used the situation. "I'm so sorry to bother you," I said to the elderly shopkeeper. "I've missed my bus and I'm a bit stranded. Could you possibly advise me on the best way to get back to the city?" My voice was shaky, but I used polite, clear language. The shopkeeper didn't speak much English, but he understood my situation. He called his grandson, who arrived 10 minutes later on a scooter. The grandson, around my age, spoke excellent English. He explained there were no more buses, but he could give me a ride to the nearest train station. That 30-minute scooter ride through the countryside, chatting with a local about his life, his studies, and his dreams, was more meaningful than any guided tour. It was a connection forged from a problem. This experience taught me that sometimes, the most significant language practice comes from navigating failure and vulnerability. It's in these unscripted moments that you truly learn to think on your feet. Let's break down the language I used in that shop. First, I started with a polite apology for the interruption. "I'm so sorry to bother you." This immediately sets a respectful tone. Then, I clearly stated my problem without drama. "I've missed my bus and I'm a bit stranded." The word stranded is a powerful B2-level word that perfectly conveys the seriousness of the situation. Finally, I asked for help using a collaborative phrase. "Could you possibly advise me on?" This frames the request as seeking their wisdom, not demanding a solution. This structure, apologize for the interruption, state the fact clearly, and ask for advice, is a template you can use in countless difficult situations, from travel problems to workplace issues. Another area where I learned to be proactive was in understanding directions. People give directions in different ways. Some use landmarks, turn left at the big red church, while others use street names, go straight on until you get to Elm Street. I used to just nod and pretend I understood, then get lost immediately. Now, I actively confirm. I repeat the instructions back to them. So, just to confirm, I take the second right after the traffic lights, and then it's on my left? This does two things. It ensures you've understood correctly, and it shows the person you're listening carefully, which they appreciate. If you're still unsure, ask them to write it down or point it out on your phone's map. Taking that extra 30 seconds to confirm can save you an hour of wandering around lost. This proactive approach transforms you from a passive observer into an engaged traveler. It turns a simple transaction into a human interaction. Every question you ask, every confirmation you seek, is a step towards deeper understanding and greater confidence. You're not just learning about the place, you're learning through the people. And that is the most beautiful souvenir you can possibly bring home. Let's circle back to the workplace, but this time, let's talk about the digital world. The modern office runs on emails, instant messages, and video calls. Mastering this digital communication is just as important as nailing a face-to-face presentation. I learned this through a near-catastrophic email I sent early in my career. I thought I was being efficient and direct. I wrote, "The report is wrong. I need the correct data by 5 p.m. The silence that followed was deafening. My colleague, who had spent days on that report, was deeply offended. My boss had to pull me aside and explain the concept of email tone. I had forgotten the human on the other side of the screen. That was a pivotal moment. I started to study the unwritten rules of digital professional English. First, always start with a polite greeting. Hi, name, or good morning softens the request. Second, use softening language. Instead of I need this, try could you please provide? Or I would appreciate it if you could. Third, always thank them. A simple thanks for your help or I appreciate your time can transform the entire tone of the message. My corrected email should have read, Hi Sarah, hope you're having a good week. I've been reviewing the Q3 report and noticed some discrepancies in the data on page 2. Could you please take a look and send me the correct figures when you have a moment? Thanks so much for your help. Same core message, completely different impact. And then there are video calls. They present a unique set of challenges. The slight delay, the frozen screens, the accidental talking over each other. The language here is all about clarity and turn-taking. I make a point to use people's names more frequently to avoid confusion. Instead of just saying I agree, I say, I agree with Mark's point about the timeline. This clearly signals who I'm supporting. To avoid talking over someone, I use physical cues like a slight nod or a hand raise, but I also have verbal signals. I have a point to add, or if I could just jump in here, are polite ways to enter the conversation. And if the connection is bad, don't suffer in silence. Learn to say, I'm sorry, I think I missed that. Could you please repeat it, or you're breaking up a little? Could you rephrase that? Another digital lifesaver is the chat function. On platforms like Teams or Slack, the chat is where a lot of quick, informal communication happens. This is where you'll see abbreviations like FYI, for your information, OOO, out of office, and EOD, end of day. It's also where relationship building happens. People share funny links, birthday wishes, and pet photos. Don't be afraid to participate in this. A simple Happy Friday, everyone, or congratulating someone on a work anniversary in the general chat helps you become part of the team's social fabric. It's these small, consistent interactions that build your reputation as a friendly, engaged, and approachable colleague, even from behind a screen. Of all the professional skills we've discussed, none has been more transformative for my career than learning how to actively participate in meetings. For the longest time, I was a ghost in the conference room. I'd understand about 80% of what was being said, but the conversation moved too fast for me to formulate my thoughts. By the time I had the perfect sentence ready in my head, the topic had changed. I felt invisible, and it was killing my confidence. The breakthrough came when I realized I didn't need to make a grand speech. I just needed to learn how to insert myself into the flow with short, impactful contributions. I started small. I prepared 1 or 2 questions in advance based on the meeting agenda. I would write them down. When there was a natural pause, I would take a breath and say, I have a question about the timeline, or could you clarify the budget for this phase? Just asking a question made me present and engaged. It was a low-risk way to use my voice. People began to see me as someone who was paying attention and thinking critically. This wasn't about showing off, it was about demonstrating understanding and seeking clarity, which are valued traits in any employee. Then, I graduated to agreeing and building on ideas. This is a powerful way to show you're part of the team. Instead of just nodding, I learned to verbalize my support. When a colleague made a good point, I'd say, I completely agree with Maria's suggestion. Building on that, we could also consider. This phrase, building on that, became my best friend. It directly connected my idea to someone else's, creating a collaborative thread. It showed I was listening and that I valued their contribution enough to expand it. This is far more effective than just throwing a new idea into the void, which can sometimes feel disruptive. The final step was learning to disagree diplomatically. This was the scariest part. The fear of sounding rude or confrontational was immense. I learned to avoid the word but entirely, as it can instantly negate everything that came before it. Instead, I use and or I see it slightly differently. My go-to structure now is, I understand the points you're making about cost saving, and I'd like to offer a different perspective focusing on long-term user engagement. This acknowledges their argument before presenting my own. Another useful phrase is I see what you're saying, however, have we considered the potential risks of? This frames the disagreement as a collective problem-solving effort, not a personal attack. Mastering these micro-interventions changed everything. I went from being a silent observer to a recognized contributor. My colleagues started seeking my opinion before meetings. My manager commented on my increased engagement. It wasn't that I had become the smartest person in the room, I had simply learned the linguistic tools to share the intelligence I already had. The meeting room is no longer a source of anxiety, but a place where I know I have the vocabulary to belong. Now, I want to talk about the single biggest barrier I had to break through, and you might be facing it right now, the fear of making mistakes. For so long, I was trapped in my own head. I would rehearse sentences silently before speaking, only to have the conversation move on. I was so focused on producing perfect, grammatically impeccable English that I barely produced any English at all. This pursuit of perfection was the very thing holding me back. The turning point came when a wise teacher told me, don't aim for perfect English. Aim for effective communication. An intelligent mistake is far better than a silent perfection. This idea of intelligent mistakes was revolutionary. It meant that it was okay to fumble for a word, as long as the core idea got across. I started taking risks. I remember trying to describe a complicated concept in a meeting and I completely blanked on the word streamline. So I said, we need to make the process more straight and fast, with less corners. It wasn't elegant, but everyone understood. My manager even smiled and said, you mean streamline? And I said, yes. That's the word, thank you. That small, collaborative moment was far more valuable than if I had just stayed silent. My mistake led to learning, and it humanized me. I began to see every error not as a failure, but as a data point. Each mispronounced word or awkward phrase was information telling me what I needed to practice next. I kept a mistake journal where I would jot down corrections I received or phrases I heard natives use. Instead of feeling embarrassed when someone corrected me, I learned to say, thank you. That's really helpful. This shifted my entire mindset from one of shame to one of growth. The goal wasn't to never be wrong, the goal was to never make the same mistake twice. This proactive approach accelerated my learning more than any textbook ever could. This mindset is especially crucial in relationships. When you're building a friendship or even a romantic relationship, authenticity is everything. Trying to be perfect is exhausting and creates a barrier. When I started dating in English, I was a nervous wreck. I was so worried about my grammar that I came across as stiff and uninterested. Finally, I decided to just be myself, mistakes and all. I told my date, just so you know, I might make some funny grammar mistakes, but I'm really enjoying our conversation. He laughed and said he found it endearing. That vulnerability, that admission of imperfection actually brought us closer. It was a powerful reminder that we connect through our humanity, not our flawless verb tenses. So, I encourage you to embrace the beautiful mess of learning a language. Speak even when your voice shakes. Laugh at your own mistakes. Ask for help. Every time you open your mouth, you are practicing, you are learning, and you are building a bridge to another person. The English you speak doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. The final frontier in language learning isn't a grammar rule or a vocabulary list, it's the moment you stop translating in your head and start thinking directly in English. This shift is subtle but profound. It's the difference between feeling like a student and feeling like a user of the language. For me, this began to happen not in a classroom, but in the most ordinary of places, the supermarket. I was pushing my cart, looking for ingredients for a pasta dish, and I realized my internal monologue was in English. I need basil. They're out of fresh basil. Maybe I can use dried oregano instead. It was a mundane moment, but it felt like a miracle. I wasn't constructing sentences, I was just thinking. So, how do you cultivate this? It starts with changing the language of your daily, private thoughts. Narrate your actions to yourself in English. When you're making coffee, think, I'm boiling the water. I'm pouring it over the coffee grounds. It feels silly at first, but it rewires your brain to form a direct connection between actions and English words, bypassing your native tongue. Next, change the language on your phone and social media feeds. Force your brain to navigate the digital world in English. This passive immersion is incredibly effective. You'll learn tech vocabulary and contemporary slang without even trying. Another powerful technique is to consume media that you genuinely enjoy, but with a strategic twist. I love watching series, but I stopped relying on subtitles in my native language. I switched to English subtitles, and then eventually, to no subtitles at all. The key is to watch something you're already familiar with. For me, it was reruns of a favorite sitcom. Because I already knew the plot and the characters, I could focus on the language, the jokes, the sarcasm, the rhythm of the conversations. I was absorbing the musicality of English, the way words flow into one another in casual speech. This is where you learn the difference between the formal I am going to and the natural I'm gonna. But thinking in English truly solidifies when you start dreaming in it. The first time I dreamt in English, I woke up feeling like I had unlocked a superpower. It was a confusing dream about being in a meeting with my favorite film characters, but the language was there. It was fluid and unplanned. This happens when your brain has absorbed enough of the language that it starts to use it as a tool for processing your subconscious. Don't worry if this takes time, it's a sign that the language is sinking into the deepest parts of your mind. It means English is no longer just a subject you study, it's becoming a part of who you are. This journey from structured practice to unconscious integration is the ultimate goal. It transforms English from an external skill you perform into an internal tool you use to navigate and understand the world. It's the point where you stop being a learner and simply become a speaker. You've reached a comfortable level. You can handle meetings, travel with ease, and build meaningful relationships. So, what comes after B2? The journey doesn't end, it simply changes. The plateau is the most dangerous point for any language learner because the obvious mistakes are gone and the progress feels less dramatic. I hit this plateau hard. I was functional, but I wasn't elegant. I was understood, but I wasn't persuasive. I was good, but I wanted to be great. How do you push from competent to compelling? The first strategy was to engage with English not as a language student, but as a lifelong learner in my field. I started listening to sophisticated podcasts about marketing and psychology, not just language learning podcasts. I read industry reports and in-depth articles from publications like The Economist. I wasn't just looking for new words, I was absorbing complex sentence structures, nuanced arguments, and sophisticated phrasing. I would listen to a particularly eloquent speaker and pause the audio, repeating a sentence aloud to feel the rhythm and cadence of their speech. I was learning to mimic the music of advanced English. Secondly, I started focusing on precision. At a B2 level, you can get your point across. At a higher level, you get your point across with exactness and impact. I consciously started to retire vague words like good, bad, or thing. Instead of the presentation was good, I'd force myself to say, the presentation was persuasive and well-structured. Instead of we have a thing on Monday, I'd say, we have a client call on Monday. This seems small, but it trains your brain to search for and retrieve more specific vocabulary. I kept a list of these vague words and their more precise alternatives on my desk. This is how you develop a richer, more mature lexicon. But the most significant leap came from a surprising source, finding a conversation partner with whom I discussed abstract ideas. My friend David and I started a weekly coffee debate. We would pick a topic, like the ethics of artificial intelligence, the nature of happiness, or the future of cities, and we would simply talk for an hour. We had one rule: no small talk. This forced me to use language I rarely exercised in daily life. I had to formulate hypotheses, defend opinions with logical reasoning, and use linking words like furthermore, conversely, and notwithstanding. Struggling to express a complex philosophical idea in English is the ultimate brain training. It forges new neural pathways and unlocks a level of fluency that daily transactions never will. This is the secret to moving beyond the plateau. You must challenge yourself with concepts that are difficult to express even in your native language. You have to become a lifelong learner of content, not just language. And you must never, ever settle for being simply understood. Aim to be captivating. Aim to be precise. Aim to make people not just hear you, but listen to you. The language you have now is a powerful tool. But the language you can still build is a masterpiece in progress. And so we arrive here, at the end of this particular conversation, but truly, it is just the beginning of yours. This journey we've been on through work, travel, and relationships isn't really about English. It's about voice. It's about unlocking your ability to express your ideas, your personality, and your unique perspective to a wider world. The grammar structures and vocabulary lists are merely the keys. But you are the one who must turn the lock and open the door. I want to leave you with one final story, a moment of quiet realization. After a year in London, I was visiting my family back home. We were sitting around the dinner table, and I was telling a story about a project at work. Mid-sentence, I couldn't find the right word in my native language. It simply wasn't there. The perfect word existed only in English. For a split second, I felt a sense of loss, as if I was losing a part of my original identity. But then, I understood. I wasn't losing anything. I was gaining a new layer. I had a new tool for thinking, a new lens for seeing the world. English had become not just a language I spoke, but a language I could think in, a language I could feel in. That is the ultimate goal. It's not about sounding like a native speaker. It's about sounding like you in English. It's about bringing your own humor, your own intelligence, and your own warmth into every interaction. Don't erase your accent, let it tell the story of your journey. Don't hide your occasional mistakes, let them show your courage. The world isn't waiting for a perfect English speaker. It is waiting for you, with your stories, your skills, and your desire to connect. So, take these tools. Practice the softeners in your emails. Use the follow-up questions to build bridges. Navigate the travel problems with calm clarity. Have the difficult conversations with respectful honesty. Think in English while you cook. Dream in English about your future. You have everything you need to move from the intermediate plateau to the advanced peaks. The path is right in front of you. All you have to do is keep walking it, one conversation at a time. Thank you for walking this part of it with me. Now, go and have your next great conversation. We have reached the end of our journey together through this script, but as we've discussed, your personal journey with the English language is just beginning. The path from intermediate to advanced is not a straight line, it's a continuous cycle of learning, practicing, making mistakes, and growing. You now have a toolkit filled with strategies for work, from navigating meetings and writing emails to building professional relationships. You have the confidence to travel not as a tourist, but as a traveler, engaging with new cultures and handling unexpected situations with clarity. Most importantly, you have the understanding that language is the bridge to genuine human connection, allowing you to form friendships and share your authentic self. Remember, consistency is your greatest ally. Even just 15 minutes of active practice each day, listening to a podcast, writing a few sentences in a journal, speaking with a conversation partner, will compound into remarkable progress over time. Don't let the pursuit of perfection paralyze you. Embrace the beautiful, messy process of learning. Celebrate the small victories, like the first time you understand a joke without subtitles or the moment you effortlessly give someone directions. Let's pivot now to a subtle but powerful grammatical tool that will instantly make your English sound more nuanced and advanced: the present perfect continuous tense. You're likely comfortable with the simple past. I worked on the report. That's fine. It tells us what you did. But now, listen to the difference. I've been working on the report all morning, so I need a coffee. Do you feel the difference? The second sentence doesn't just state a fact, it provides context. It connects a past action to the present moment, explaining your current state. It tells a mini-story. We use this tense to talk about actions that started in the past and are either still continuing or have just recently stopped, with a result in the present. The structure is have plus been plus verb ing. Let's break it down with a relationship example. Imagine a friend calls and asks, "Your eyes are red, are you okay?" You could say, "I'm sad." But a more descriptive, natural response is, "I've been watching a very emotional film." This explains why your eyes are red right now. The action of watching may have just finished, but the evidence is visible in the present. This tense is also invaluable for giving explanations at work without sounding like you're making excuses. If your manager asks why a task isn't finished, saying, "I didn't finish it" sounds blunt. But saying, "I've been dealing with a persistent issue in the database, which has taken up most of my time," frames your effort as ongoing problem solving. It shows you are actively engaged in the issue, not just ignoring the task. It's a small shift in language that creates a huge shift in perception. Now, let's apply this to travel. You're on a video call with your family back home. They say, "You look tired." You could say, "I am tired." Or, you could bring your journey to life. "I've been exploring the city all day on foot." This one sentence paints a picture of an ongoing adventure. It's dynamic and engaging. Practice blending this tense into your narratives. Instead of "I traveled through Italy," try "I've been traveling through Italy for the past 2 weeks, and I've been discovering so many amazing little cafes." The latter makes your listener feel like they are on the journey with you. Here is a quick practice. Think about what you have been doing recently. Perhaps you've been studying English consistently. Perhaps you've been feeling a bit stressed because you've been working on a big project. Form those sentences in your mind. I have been studying. I have been feeling. This is the language of experience, not just events. Mastering it is a key step from B2 to C1. Now, let's tackle a skill that separates competent speakers from truly engaging ones: the art of transitioning between topics. Think of a conversation as a river, not a series of isolated ponds. You don't want to just jump from one subject to another, you want to flow naturally. This is where linking phrases and follow-up questions become your best tools. A clumsy transition can make a conversation feel stilted, but a smooth one makes it feel effortless and intelligent. I used to just wait for a topic to die an awkward death before introducing a new one. It was inefficient and boring. Then I learned to listen for natural hooks in what the other person was saying. For example, if a colleague says, "I'm so relieved the project is finally finished," you have several hooks. You can focus on the feeling, "I know the feeling." That sense of relief is amazing. Then you can pivot. "Speaking of relief, are you planning any trips now that you have some free time?" You use their emotion as a bridge to a new, related topic. Another great hook is a specific noun. If they mention they went hiking in Scotland, you can ask, "Oh, I've always wanted to go. What was the most stunning landscape you saw?" This shows you're listening and are curious about their experience. Beyond hooks, we have explicit transition phrases that signal a shift. These are especially useful in meetings or more formal discussions. Instead of abruptly saying, "So, about the budget," you can use a smoother approach. Try phrases like, "That reminds me of something related to the budget." Or, building on what you said about marketing, "I think we should consider the financial implications." Another professional transition is, if we're ready to move on, the next item on the agenda is. These phrases act as verbal signposts, guiding your listeners gracefully from one point to the next and making you sound like a skilled facilitator. In social and travel contexts, your transitions can be more personal but equally strategic. Let's say you're at a hostel and you've been talking about food with a fellow traveler. You want to shift to making plans. You could say, "Talking about all this amazing food is making me hungry. I read about a great local market nearby. Would you be interested in checking it out together this afternoon?" This links the current conversation to a future action in a very natural, low-pressure way. The transition is built on a shared interest and leads directly to a deeper social interaction. It's how acquaintances become friends. Mastering these transitions requires active listening and a bit of practice, but the payoff is immense. Your conversations will stop feeling like interviews and start feeling like flowing, mutually enjoyable exchanges. You'll spend less time thinking of what to say next and more time being present in the dialogue itself. This is the heart of true connection. Of all the challenges I faced, nothing was quite as humbling or as ultimately rewarding as learning to understand the wild variety of English accents. I'll never forget my first conference call with our team in Glasgow. I had prepared meticulously, but within 30 seconds, I was completely lost. The rhythm, the intonation, the different vowel sounds, it was like listening to a completely different language. I spent the entire hour nodding silently, my confidence shattered. That day, I realized that passing exams had only equipped me with one version of English. The real world was a symphony of accents. The first step is to train your ear actively. This goes beyond passive listening. I started dedicating time each week to listening to specific accents. I would find podcasts from different parts of the UK, Australia, and the United States. I'd listen to a short segment, maybe just 1 minute long, and transcribe it. Then, I'd listen again with the transcript to see what I missed. It was painstaking work, but it was like doing weight training for my ears. I began to notice patterns. The Scottish lock with its soft guttural sound, the Australian rising intonation at the end of sentences, the different pacing of American Southern English. Understanding these patterns demystified them. Next, I learned a crucial survival skill: how to ask for clarification without feeling embarrassed or interrupting the flow. My old habit was to smile and pretend I understood, which always led to bigger problems later. I developed a toolkit of polite phrases. Instead of a blunt "what" or "I don't understand," I would say, "I'm sorry, could you please repeat that a little more slowly?" or "I want to make sure I'm following you correctly, did you say?" Another useful phrase is, "Could you please rephrase that?" This signals that you're engaged and want to understand, not that you're criticizing their accent. People are almost always happy to help when you ask politely. This skill is particularly vital when traveling. A bus driver in Dublin, a shopkeeper in Newcastle, a street vendor in New Orleans, they will all speak with their unique local flavor. I learned to let go of the need to understand every single word and instead focus on grasping the core meaning. Listen for keywords and the general context. Your brain is an incredible pattern recognition machine. The more you expose it to a variety of accents, the better it gets at filtering out the noise and locking onto the signal. It's a muscle that strengthens with use. Embrace the diversity. Every accent tells a story of history, migration, and culture. Now, when I hear a new accent, I don't feel anxiety, I feel curiosity. It's a reminder of the rich, global tapestry of the English language. And the day I finally understood every word of that Glasgow team's joke during a call was a victory that felt sweeter than any exam grade. Let's talk about the secret sauce that can make you sound truly natural in English: idioms. These are the phrases that don't make literal sense, but every native speaker uses them. When I first heard a colleague say, "Let's touch base next week," I was genuinely confused. Touch what base? It sounded like a sports reference. And it is, but it simply means to make contact and communicate. Learning idioms is like learning the inside jokes of a language. It makes you feel like you truly belong. Idioms are clustered around common themes, which makes them easier to learn. In the workplace, you'll hear them constantly. "We need to get the ball rolling on this project" means to start it. If a task is a piece of cake, it's very easy. And if your boss says you should think outside the box, she wants you to be creative and consider unconventional solutions. Using one of these appropriately in a meeting, like saying, "I'll try to think outside the box on this one," shows you're not just fluent in the language, but also in the culture of the workplace. In social and travel contexts, idioms bring color and personality to your conversations. If you're feeling tired after a long flight, you could say, "I'm feeling a bit under the weather." If you found a hidden, local restaurant that isn't in the guidebooks, you could tell a friend, "We found a real hole-in-the-wall place." This is far more vivid than saying a small restaurant. If you and a new friend immediately understand each other, you might say, "We're really on the same wavelength." These phrases convey complex ideas and emotions in a way that simple, literal language often can't. However, a word of caution: don't overdo it. Sprinkling one or two idioms into a conversation makes you sound natural. Using them in every sentence makes you sound like you're trying too hard. The key is to learn them in context. Don't just memorize lists. Listen for how native speakers use them. Watch for them in films and TV shows. And when you hear a new one, write it down with the example sentence. Practice using it in a safe environment first, perhaps with a language partner, before bringing it into a high-stakes meeting. Remember, the goal is effective communication, not to show off. Used wisely, idioms are the final touch that transforms your English from correct to captivating. Now, let's explore a grammatical structure that adds a layer of sophistication and subtlety to your English: the subjunctive mood. This might sound intimidating, but you are likely already using it without realizing it. The subjunctive is used to express wishes, suggestions, demands, and hypothetical situations. It's the difference between stating a fact and exploring a possibility, and mastering it will give you a powerful tool for negotiation, diplomacy, and personal expression. The most common trigger for the subjunctive is verbs like suggest, recommend, insist, and demand. The key rule is that the verb that follows doesn't change for he, she, or it. So, you don't say, "I suggest that he studies more." Instead, you say, "I suggest that he study more." It sounds a bit formal, but it's correct. Similarly, "I recommend that she take a few days off." Or, "We insisted that the manager be present at the meeting." This structure is essential in professional contexts where you are making formal recommendations or stating requirements. It conveys authority and precision. We also use the subjunctive with hypothetical if clauses, often referred to as the second conditional. This is where we talk about unreal or unlikely situations in the present or future. The structure is if plus past simple, would plus base verb. For example, if I had more time, I would travel the world. I don't have more time, so this is a dream. In a relationship context, you might say, "If I were you, I would call her." Notice we use were for all subjects, not was. So, if I were, if you were, if we were. This is a classic marker of an advanced speaker. If I were the manager, I would implement a 4-day work week. It's a hypothetical suggestion. The subjunctive is also the language of wishes. When you wish for something that isn't true or is unlikely, you use wish followed by the past subjunctive. I wish I were more fluent. This implies I am not as fluent as I'd like to be. I wish I knew the answer. I don't know the answer. He wishes he had a better job. He doesn't have a better job. This allows you to express nuanced feelings of desire and regret, moving beyond simple statements like "I want to be fluent" to the more reflective "I wish I were fluent." Integrating the subjunctive into your speech will elevate your language significantly. It allows you to participate in complex discussions about strategy, to give nuanced advice, and to articulate your hopes and dreams with greater elegance. Practice by rephrasing your thoughts. Instead of "it's important for him to be here," try "it's essential that he be here." Instead of "my advice is for you to apologize," try "I recommend that you apologize." This small shift in structure represents a giant leap in your command of the English language. Let's turn our attention to the final piece of the puzzle, the element that can make even grammatically perfect English sound foreign: pronunciation, specifically the music of the language. This isn't just about individual sounds, it's about rhythm, stress, and intonation. English is a stress-timed language. This means that stressed syllables occur at regular intervals, and we squeeze unstressed syllables in between. This is why the sentence "the beautiful mountain appeared immense" takes about the same time to say as "the big hill looked huge." The number of syllables is different, but the rhythm is the same. The most important sound in the English language is the schwa. It's the lazy, unstressed S sound represented by an upside-down E in the phonetic alphabet. It appears in countless unstressed syllables. Think about the word banana. The stress is on the second syllable. The first and last syllables are both pronounced as a schwa, banana. This is the secret to a natural rhythm. We don't say banana. We reduce the unstressed vowels. Listen for it in words like support, computer, computer, and sofa, sofa. Mastering the schwa is like finding the key to the rhythm of English. Then comes connected speech. We don't speak in separate, carefully enunciated words. We link them together. This is what makes native speech sometimes hard to follow. The most common linking is between a consonant and a vowel. An apple becomes an apple. Turn off can sound like turn off. We also use assimilation, where a sound changes to become more like a neighboring sound. Good girl often sounds like good girl. Handbag can sound like handbag. This isn't sloppy, it's efficient and natural. Trying to pronounce every word in isolation will make you sound robotic. Practice by listening to short phrases and repeating them, focusing on the flow, not the individual words. Finally, we have intonation, the rise and fall of your voice. This is the emotional layer of speech. A flat intonation can make you sound bored or unfriendly, even if your words are polite. We use rising intonation in yes/no questions. Are you coming? We use falling intonation in statements and information questions. I'm coming. What time is it? But we also use intonation to show attitude. A slight rise in the middle of a statement can show interest or surprise. You really mean that? Practice by shadowing. Listen to a short audio clip from a podcast or a film character you like, and try to imitate not just their words, but their exact melody and rhythm. Record yourself and compare. This is how you will begin to capture the music of English, moving from speaking correctly to speaking with a voice that is both understood and felt.